certainly. I like how I get to loosen it up.
Yeah,
That's easy enough.
you're the vet. I'm the one that needs to have, you show me the ropes here.
Yeah, I do one of these like every week, so
Mm-hmm.
it's not a shock for me. So, well, I'm Erik with Stochastic Marketing, and I am thrilled to be here. After being in the industry for more than a decade, in this position with Stochastic, and having come from a background working with an individual contractor as a marketing manager, sales manager, and really having tackled office management, et cetera. I have been all around this industry and working with contractors from coast to coast with Stochastic for more than a decade. And I'm just really excited to open up this channel to reach out to you guys with real factual information. Because if you have worked with Stochastic before, we're a real data driven company. And one of the pitfalls we find is that there's a lot of opinions out there in the industry. And one of the things I'm most excited about with this alliance with Amanda is working together to bring real factual based information. Not my opinion, not how it feels today, but really backing everything we talk about up with data. And so it's a real pleasure to be here and to kick this off.
Okay, but the thing is now I realize that I should never follow you because now there's like this expectation that I'm going to dazzle the way you do. So we'll have to see how that goes. Yeah, I'm Amanda Wilhelm. I am a co-founder.
There's no dazzle.
Yeah, there is. I think maybe it's the red glasses that give you the extra confidence. I got to find my red glasses, but it's great. So I'm Amanda Wilhelm. I'm a co-founder with a group of partners that run Ad Home Marketing. We are part of a bigger marketing agency. Primarily, though, I have been working in digital marketing with HVAC companies for the last 12 years. I'm not going to tell you we come up with the best headlines. I'm going to tell you we come up with the best headlines for your customer at the right time. And so we focus on data to drive the creative direction. And we love working with other vendors like Erik who can, help us analyze the data even further and provide additional insight to like what our customers are going through in the customer journey. And then we like to use AI and machine learning to help us automate a lot of the processes, but primarily we are a data-driven marketing agency.
Well, and that's why I'm so excited to partner with you. I think, this is a fantastic opportunity for us to talk about not so much the feel of the industry, but the hard numbers. And I think we have a great topic to kind of kick this whole thing off, which is talking about the beginning of this year, which has been like no other we have ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
It has been a fantastic launch to the year for most contractors. Numbers we've not seen in all of our analysis in the last decade. We have never seen growth. And I will start with you because I think you've got a kind of an interesting perspective on this one. I can talk about some of the hard numbers here in a second that we're seeing on closing rates and things of that nature. But I want to jump over to you because what are you seeing on the digital side? We're just having this explosion in sales over Q1, and now I'm of course seeing it in April and into May. That's going on with contractors. So from a digital side, what's the difference that you are seeing as we kick off the beginning of this year? Because something has changed in the industry, and I know there's a lot of moving pieces that we're going to talk about. But what's the change you're seeing digitally?
Yeah, so great question. I love talking about what's changed in the digital world because I can have a weekly podcast just talking about that because everything changes so quickly. In order for me to explain why 2021 is such an anomaly, I also need to explain why 2020 was such an anomaly. Not that I have to at all harp on what was going on in the world in 2020. I think that's discussed. But what I saw on a digital standpoint was more people were at home. More people were feeling the uncomfortableness of their AC not working throughout the year. We saw an increase in, I guess, efficiency is the way that you would explain it. So we saw people getting less quotes. So that, and I think that just had to do with, comfortability of having people in their home. I've seen that change now. So, as things are opening up, we're starting to see people doing more searches, but not as high of a conversion rate as we saw before. So, that tells me that the market's being pretty competitive. I'm good. Take a sip of my non-alcoholic beer, Erik.
Oh, that just sounds like a waste of time.
People make fun of me for it all the time. I get it, but I like it. So yeah, heading into 2021, what we've seen, and keep in mind, we have clients in colder climates like Canada, and we have in, across the US and in warmer climates. So I'm talking in general, but it's very specific to a weather system and a market right now. In Canada, it's pretty mild, so we're not seeing that spike in air conditioner. Lead gen yet, but I am seeing the buzz, and my clients up in Canada are all getting ready and trying to buy as many air conditioners as they can for this season. And it really will be about like a throttle game. So knowing how much to spend on these leads, and then knowing when you're full, you have to shut them off, because it's going to be super competitive this year. And so that's really the main difference I've seen between 2020 and 2021 is last year people pulled their spend and they still got the AC sales. This year, it's going to be about being more strategic with your spend.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think, one of the big things, and you made an excellent point there, we're not really just talking about a kickoff to the beginning of the year. We're talking about 12, now close to 14 months where we have had nothing but growth for this industry. I mean, by and large, when we're analyzing companies, and we've got analysis for over 250 companies through the beginning of April, and we have analysis for over 500 companies on the record. We've never, going all the way back to 2011, never seen a run like this, like we have seen really over the last 12, 14 months. Just an explosion of sales that started really right after, and it varied a little bit area to area. And it all depended on when your lockdown happened. And I know it's a little different on the state side than it is. You guys kind of went on a countrywide lockdown a lot faster. We, of course, didn't do that. And so you get these little pockets where some places they have their little, what I call their COVID dip in March, or their COVID dip in April. And some of it was a COVID dip in June. And then the next month, they would come roaring back to life and basically make up all those lost sales. And most everybody didn't slow down from there, unless there was a fundamental problem, right? If a guy, if they lost a great salesperson, if they made a big change, if they fired somebody, if they hired a bunch of people. Without any of those changes, guys who kind of just held steady and moved through. And as long as they didn't turn their marketing off last year, that was one of the big key mistakes people did. And the few companies we saw that had bad years last year, they just shut things down and kind of went into a hole and tried to survive, while the rest of the world and the rest of the industry was really thriving. But come to the beginning of this year, all of that changes, because even though it's been a record run for the last 14 months, it's really the last 4.5 months that have exploded. January, February, March, average installs up that we see across companies is 40% more installs this year versus last year. That's the average. I've got guys who are up 250% year over year on the number of installs they did through Q1, and most of them telling me, and their numbers back it up, they had a better April than they did Q1. So just this explosion in sales. And when we backtrack that, and you can't get down to quite the day and the time because it's hard to narrow that down that far, it looks like stimulus checks played a big part in this. We see some big pops in installs happen just after those checks. And from my side, from a data analytics standpoint, it makes all the sense in the world. All the people who we are selling to as an industry, and we'll have to do a podcast where we go into kind of the demo and really who we want to focus on. And, at the end of the day, is it really just old people in old houses with money? It is. But, there's some more nuance to it.
There's some more targeting that goes into it. Yeah.
There is, but that's what we're looking for. We want old people in old houses with money. If we get those, we're all going to be just fine. But with those stimulus checks, because of the way they hit and who they hit, because they basically went to everybody, right? Just about everybody got one, especially if you had kids. And they were big numbers. $5,000, $10,000 was not abnormal in these checks. And so for the demo we're looking at, people who have wealth, who are in the upper echelons of society, they didn't need this check to offset because most of them were not the people drastically affected. So now they have this extra income, and we can see in the numbers that those people are buying more. And so that's probably what the reason why Q1 this year is unlike anything we've ever seen. And of course, there's a backside to that, which is that eventually those checks will go away, and Q1 next year probably won't look like Q1 this year. And there's no way. So if we go back in time to 2011 forward, we are 4 or 5 times higher in install percentage now, the growth that we've seen in any other year this year than in any year for the past 10 years. So you don't get 4 or 5 times beyond the mean and stay there. It always comes back down. Now, it might not come all the way back down, but if we get 10%, 15%, 20% more next year than we had in 2019, 2020, that would be great. That would be a great soft landing spot. I find it very hard to believe we're going to have 100% of what we have in 2021. It seems very unfeasible because what goes up, as they often say, must come down. So should you be a little apprehensive? Yes, but the apprehensive part's really simple to fix. This is the best problem to have as an HVAC company. You get to be choosy. Pick who you want to work with. Now you can start to really dispatch for profits, is a term people use a lot for it. You really have the opportunity to say, this is the call I want to go to, and this is a low priority call. Take this opportunity to do that. And you're talking about throttling marketing up, throttling marketing down, and you and I disagree about that just a hair. Because I believe if you're doing good targeted marketing and you have ways to isolate better people in a market, people who are a higher priority, more willing to spend money with you, what I would call a good prospect, then you should keep that marketing turned on. Even if you turn it down, you might dial it back a bit. But if you keep that marketing going, and then you have these high priority calls that are coming in, if you can get $1,500 more, which is what you should get if you're doing a good job modeling, if you can get $1,000 to $1,500 more out of one customer versus another, why wouldn't you want those calls still coming in? They pay for themselves, and those high priority customers are really what should be driving your business. They're what going to allow you to come into the end of this year, beginning of next year when things fall down. If you have a good roster of people coming on who are those high priority, that will help soften that blow as opposed to just taking the demand call.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, see, I think you and I actually agree more than you think we do because, and maybe I changed my mind since our last conversation. When I explain branding versus lead gen and I talk about throttling, I'm really talking about the bottom of the funnel. So, where I look at branding, radio, billboard, SEO, digital ads, YouTube, direct mail, all of those things should be a set budget based off of the revenue target that you're hoping to achieve by the end of the year. And the creative can be evaluated, but you're not throttling your budgets up and down in the branding standpoint. Hopefully you're evaluating your branding every year and making sure you're making the best media buying. The search to be throttled. So we have really good relationships with the branding companies that, even radio, even billboard, and we sync our creative so that it's a consistent message. But I'm saying let's throttle the very bottom of the funnel based off of how many spots you have in your schedule. So I agree with you in the sense like go hire as many people as you possibly can, to have your same business strategy that you've always wanted to have, and then just be willing to kind of allow your marketing to sort of throttle up and down just on the bottom of it. The branding needs to stay consistent. And if anything, you need to be spending more on branding and reinvesting that branding as much as you can this year, because it's not going to hurt as much. Like you're going to have the revenue come in and having that influx of branding. It's a really good time for you to spend that additional branding boost in the market, in my opinion.
Let me throw a counterpoint here. So Q1 this year and through April, where we've got solid numbers from, we're seeing a trend we have never seen before. So when we isolate markets for a client, we break them down into a couple different pots: super primary, primary, secondary, and other. And just as a quick, because I'm going to use those terms here for a moment, a super primary zip code is where a company does $500,000 or more in sales. Primary zip code is where a company does $100,000 or more in sales. And those would be the areas that I would tell you you should focus the vast majority of your marketing. Secondary market is a zip code where you make between $10,000 and $999,000 $99,000 in marketing. So that's kind of that
in
segue
revenue.
market. It's in yearly revenue in that zip code. And then other markets would be anything where you make less than 10 grand. We could just take other markets and set them to the side. You shouldn't be messing with those, and there's no change in them really this year. A little bit of a change. We'll talk about that briefly. But what we're seeing in Q1 of this year is an explosion in sales in the secondary market. Now, I would tell you not to go to the secondary market unless it's for an install. Here's the beautiful thing that's happening right now. People are going to the secondary market and getting lots of installs. The number of sales and the number of installs and install dollars that have come out of the secondary market for all of the companies we analyzed through April this year versus last year has grown 100%. So that number has doubled. Now, part of that is the play of small numbers. A very low percentage, only about 25% of a company's sales will come out of a very large percentage of their zip codes in that secondary market. But that number has still doubled, and that's not insignificant when it doubles. And so what we're finding is, and where I would have a little bit of issue with your statement about the top of the funnel versus the bottom of the funnel, would be that I believe, and again, I have no problem with someone going to their secondary market to get installed, as long as that's all they do. I don't want you going there, and again, my opinion, based on the numbers, when you go to a secondary market, you're about 7 times less likely to pick up a new customer, and you're about 2.5 times less likely to get a replacement sale. So I really don't want you going there unless it's a really sure deal. But this year, that seems to be happening pretty well. So while I would agree that having some marketing still out there, I would say right now, as we're getting into season, and we're finding this a lot, guys are already hitting capacity in May. And actually, guys were hitting capacity in April. Now's when you start to go your really targeted marketing. Now it's where we're going, okay, radio covers 40 zip codes. Radio covers 30 zip codes. Your business is probably isolated to about 1 zip code per $1 million in sales. That's probably it for where you matter. We should, again, do another podcast about that. Yeah, and so if that's the kind of coverage you have, if you're a $4 million business, what good is radio going to do you if you're hitting capacity in May before we have any weather? Right? It's too much. You're going to get too broad of an audience. And I can't be, the one thing I can't be, I love radio on some level. I can't be selective with radio. I can't pick who turns on the station.
When you and I are talking, we're really talking about new customer acquisition, and we'll get into that in another talk as well with your alpha chart. But when I target campaigns, with digital, we're using more than just the zip code. Because what happens is will with you and I in our alliance is we agree upon the zip codes in general. And then further from that, you're narrowing it down based off of the filters that you need to send a triggered direct mail piece only to the subset of homes that you've analyzed is the primary market is actually going to buy. Whereas for me, I can't target digitally that way. So we're agreeing on which zip codes to target. And then I would take it away. And from there, I start using things like the actions taken to start targeting. So, if we have one zip code, I'm running a branded campaign. There's 5,000 homes in this market. You've decided that there's 35 homes worthy of targeting with direct mail. I'm going to either know those 35 with the alliance, or I'm going to target all 5,000, and I start narrowing it down based off of, did they see an ad? Did they click an ad? Did they watch a video? How long of the video? How many pages did they visit? And so where my targeting starts going to is more intent. And that's really where the whole, industry is going with digital marketing is intent. Local marketing has always been local marketing, but now it's about, it's not about where you're placing your ad, it's about who you place your ad to. So if somebody could tell me like, oh, I want to, these are the 3,500 people we want to target in this zip code, and you and I are targeting them and agreeing on them with the client that these are the best ones based off of all the data sets, then how we target them is the fun part. It's the creative part. We can test different creative. We can test different prices. We can, I can show a video instead of a display ad, instead of a Facebook ad. And there's a lot of really cool creative things we can do, but it's really all about the data, in my opinion. It's about analyzing it, understanding where the best target is, and then having the creative strategy conversations to be like, okay, how are we going to capitalize on these 35 out of this 5,000 zip code?
Yeah, well, and look, don't disregard the rest of the people in that zip code. They still sell to them. They're just, those people only call. Oh, people only ever call when they have a problem, right? That's when our industry gets called. So when we're talking about the 5,000 versus the 3,500, you'll still sell to the other 1,500 people in that zip code. And so you shouldn't not market to them. You just don't want to go with a high cost piece. So if you're talking about something like a direct mail piece, if you're talking about a really targeted, geo-targeted ad, I know some people have gone so far as to geofence around individual homes, which is
not recommended. I have better strategies for that. Don't do that. Don't do that. It's too creepy.
Well, yeah, and well, not only is it creepy. I mean, a lot of what both of us do is creepy, right? I mean, we can look into, it's close enough that we're not quite to seeing into their souls, but we can get very close with the data available, especially on the U.S. side. I mean, we can get everything from, the car, the truck that they drive, and where they go to church, and probably where they like to go and eat breakfast. I mean, there's a lot of data you can get about people if you want to pay for it. It's all about, cost versus return. But, the big thing we can do as an industry looking towards the beginning of next year is to get ready for the fact that it probably won't look like this year, and that somewhere between where 2019 was and where 2021 was is where everybody's going to fall. And so you got to be ready for that plan. That doesn't mean you have to fire a bunch of people, let a bunch of people go right now. And you have to get while the getting's good, right? Summer's going to be here, and if they don't buy it from you, they're going to buy it from somebody else. So absolutely get every install you can right now, and make sure that you're going to the best houses, even up in Canada, because we've run the numbers, right, for some of your Canadian customers. Summer's still their peak, even though they have a great winter.
We have a great summer.
Peak install time for them.
It's hot. It's hot in the summer.
So like a week, right?
Oh, come on. It does get hot. It gets hot, but yeah, exactly. About a week. And so stuff that people don't know that's kind of new with Google is that, I can know when someone's doing a search for AC repair in Fresno and they didn't click our ad, I can target just people that didn't click our ad on Google with a display ad or a YouTube ad or a Facebook ad.
But the interesting thing you said was that Google ability to track by their search, that's with the new changes that have happened at Google in the beginning of this year, right?
Yeah.
Last year, beginning of this year.
Yeah. So a lot of people are asking about like the iOS and what that, what did that change in the market with remarketing? Well, in my opinion, your database is opt-in. So Google has kind of eliminated their privacy issue. So if we can feed your CRM data into Google and then target used based off of opt-in data sets, Google's kind of okay with it and their hands are clean of it. So the trend has now been focused on Google giving us less information, but us feeding it more from the database, because it's an opt-in client and information there. Does that make sense? Or is that?
There is exactly, yes. And now I'm excited because you just told me something I didn't know. We're allowed to feed data in and use that kind of as we want to, which is a new advantage and allows us to tighten that. I'm sorry, I'm extracting everything I can from what you said.
Yeah, that's it.
I know
it's not official.
Scary, right?
It's not official. It's just it's my opinion of how the market's going. It's my opinion of the tools that Google has been, in the conversations that Google talks to us about and the trends that they're seeing. It seems to me like they're getting the bad reputation for tracking data when they, so why not just allow this opt-in and then we feed our CRM data like Service Titan or Successware or Service, House Call Pro into it. And now we have so much better data than demographic targeting. You and I can analyze a database for hours and hours and come up with hundreds of ways to target and hundreds of ways to classify your ideal or your priority, customer for each business unit, which is what I think you have to do, because you have different revenue levels for different business units and different skill sets and different rules and all of that. And so, giving your database a full scrub and a full analysis, and then taking all of the trends and all of the patterns is the goal. That's the goal for moving forward for digital marketing. What you can do with those patterns and what you do with that data is really like up to you and your marketing company, or up to you and your strategy and your market. But first, I think you and I and our relationship is so good is because we want to educate people on, first collect the data properly, then learn how amazing the data is in your CRM, and then use it for marketing. Like, if you could rate your top 3 priorities, so to fill your schedule, what would they be? If you could write down every single characteristic of your priority 1, priority 2, priority 3 for your AC install, your AC repair, your AC maintenance, your hot water tank, whatever, every single business unit individually, and then circle all the characteristics that your priority 1s have in common. I mean, that's a really good place to start. And if you have an influx year, you'll be able to, and you're turning away business because your schedule is too full, at least do this exercise now, because you'll at least be able to train your call center or your CSRs on how to find the triggers that you would want to fill your schedules with. If you only have so many spots open, it's important that we're always trying to fill it with the highest revenue opportunity, as always, and then not spending on marketing when your schedule is full. That's my philosophy, and that's kind of the soapbox I'll always die on. Is I think you should throttle your budget down when your schedule is full, because you're just paying for it to go to your competitor. But knowing that you're also analyzing the highest profit opportunity to fill that schedule, even if you have one spot left.
Sure, and I don't completely disagree with you. Although where we would differ is I would say throttle back your branding and keep your foot down on direct response, because direct response, whether it's digital, physical, etc., those should be, if you're targeting them correctly, your highest level response and your highest closing percentage and your most profit. So I mean, it's a mixed bag, and look, at a certain point, there's just too many calls. And when that happens and you're already dispatching and alleviating, then I agree. Take your foot off the gas a bit. But remember, it's harder to kick the bike back over than it is to keep it running. So what happens to people is they throttle back, and this is where automated processes can help a little bit. But people throttle back and they forget until it's too late to push the gas back down. They slow down, they take a deep breath, and they go, "Oh, we made it through that."
And then the next call I
get 3 weeks later, they go, "Oh,
where are all the calls? How come our schedule is empty? What did you do?"
Right. And so you have to have a system in place that says, and that's why I always argue more for pull back but don't turn on.
Right.
Because it's you will notice when your foot comes off the gas, but not right away. Especially when you're just loaded with people. And by the time you notice, this happens a lot when you come into like late July through mid-August, somewhere in there, business starts to slow back down. Always depends on how long summer goes, right? Mm-hmm. But guys won't pick up their advertising until late August. And so what they've done is they've missed that last bastion of installs that were there, but they weren't marketing for. And so they miss out on those opportunities. And while there's still opportunity, but you have capacity, get it, because you're not going to see that in October. You're not going to see that in September. You're going to see it the latter part of July into the first part of August, maybe the end of August. And then in a southern market, you're done really until next summer. And of course, in the northern market, you'll get some rise in the latter part of October, beginning of November. But there's a hole there every year for everybody. And
Yeah.
of course, that's a time where, as we talked about before, you want to load up those agreement customers or VIP
Or
customers,
look at
whatever
your
you'd like to
plumbing,
call
or look at your plumbing business units and see what you can do to get winterize keywords out there or whatever. There's lots of strategies to work on those shoulder
them.
seasons.
Yeah, if you have technicians that can go back and forth, absolutely. A lot of places those are separate, and some places those are kind of interchangeable. I love the model where they're more interchangeable because it gives you flexibility. Plumbing doesn't have that seasonality that HVAC does with the peaks and the valleys. There is a little bit of seasonality with plumbing, and it to some extent is the inverse of HVAC, but it really doesn't have those high peaks and valleys. More focused around holidays when you look at the numbers. So I think the big question here that you should answer for these folks is kind of the big takeaway from this. What should, if we're right with the way the beginning of this year has happened, what should they do across summer and to get ready for kind of the beginning of next year? What actions should they take right now, and what things should they be looking at right now to really drive it home from a digital aspect?
And we have a lot of trends. I like to always, kind of dazzle with what could, but then, I quickly, when I have a real strategy conversation with clients, I always dive into the what should we do. So it really does depend on what you already have in place. I like to look at it like lowest hanging fruit is if your capacity is not full, you need to fill it. That gets you the cash flow to allow you to understand, and to stretch out your team to max out your trucks. If you're not filling your revenue per truck, always look at that. That's low hanging fruit. That's very easily accomplished by increasing your direct response. You can increase by looking at your market, understanding your market share. How you do it, I think you and I disagree with, but whether you do it through Google or direct mail or however, it's, the lowest hanging fruit is to get your trucks as profitable as possible. The second thing that you should do is just analyze all of your digital equity is what I like to call it. So digital equity is do an analysis of your website, cut the fat, any pages that no one's going to, that no one cares, get rid of it. Look at a website conversion rate. A website conversion rate, I have lots of videos on our YouTube, but that is as important as your sales close rate. So in the world of marketing, to understand if you're driving any traffic to your website, you need to look at it like it's a salesperson. That's it. And knowing that your marketing team should be constantly increasing that conversion rate to get you more leads. That's lowest hanging fruit right now in the market. Second, if you've done all of those things and you think that, your SEO is good and your website's good and your PPC or your Google ads or your local service ads are all good, the second step is to really start analyzing what else is available for you on digital. You have Spotify to replace radio. You have YouTube, which is incredible. I probably should be, I'm not paid by Google, but I probably should be because I promote them. So I promote YouTube so much, but it's just so much more cost effective. You can target based off of intent with all of these digital marketing platforms. But just number one is know your numbers. Because from there, if you don't know your numbers, then how do you know what you're trying to achieve? That's my number one advice to everybody, no matter where they are, what business they have. The first thing you can do is today, walk away, is go and get your numbers, understand what it is that you're working with and what you're trying to achieve.
I think those are all good pieces of advice. I don't think we disagree as much as it may seem. I agree from a digital aspect. It's just really that focus. I'm more talking about with the branding is calling down the radio and things if you do get overloaded with leads, because you just can't control where those come from. Control your area would be one of the big things that I would say you got to really look at being through the end of the year. More important than that, though, more important than anything you can do or I can do, there are a lot of opportunities right now. If you are not sales training regularly, start that process today. And I mean today. And sales training, if you have to ask how much sales training is enough sales training, you aren't doing enough sales training.
You need to shut your HVAC business down. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Yeah, no, that's too strong. That's too strong. But honestly, if I had a guy I was talking to last week, and he says, "Well, Erik, I'm looking at it and we're running through his numbers. And I said, you're up, but you're not up as, as close to the average. And he said, okay. He said, what do you think I should do? I said, well, how much sales training are you doing? He said, well, we meet once a week. And I said, great, double that and then double it again. He said, what? I said, look, the most successful companies across the country sales train all the time, all the time. And that right now, where there is a plethora of opportunity, why wouldn't you be sales training more? Worry less about making adjustments to all the other things and really worry about teaching your technicians how to go out there and sell. Make sure they're finding every opportunity, because this year, if you're doing a good job dispatching for profits, if you're doing a good job finding those opportunities in homes, should be a record breaker for you. And if it's not a record breaker for you now, you need to look really hard at the numbers and find out why.
Yeah.
Because it's a record number of homes, it's a record number of installs, it's a record number of new customers across the board on average. And so if that's not happening for you, you really got to dive in and, like you said, know your numbers. What is it you're not doing? What is it you're not putting forth in order to find those opportunities? I think that's a big takeaway, but my biggest one is fix your sales process and then take it to another level. Take your sales training from something you talk about to something you're doing every single day. And it doesn't have to be hire an outside sales trainer, although that can help. If you just talk about the sales process all the time, it'll help improve your efficiency. And that's what we're really trying to do, especially when there is a bounty to go after. I just want to make sure that every time I go out in the field to pick apples, I can carry a few more than I could last time.
Okay, well, Erik, that was a really great conversation. I know that there's lots of additional topics that came up through this experimental video that we thought would be useful. And I've gotten to know your understanding of marketing and your philosophy a lot better too. So that's been a useful time or useful use of my time as well. Thank you for that insight.
Well, I don't know how much useful insight there was, but you're right. It's been a lot of fun, and we'll see. Perhaps people will enjoy listening to some of these. We appreciate them taking the time to swing by if they do. And if not, hey, we're going to keep pumping them out anyways, because it's just fun talking to you. So we appreciate anybody who took the time to listen to this, and we'd love to hear some feedback from you. So check it out. We should have a link somewhere around where this is. Where you get a hold of us, or you can reach us at our email addresses, which she will cleverly insert here somehow.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Thanks. Have a wonderful day.